Tuesday, October 14, 1958, 2:17 p.m. Burbank, California. Inside a quiet conference room on a studio lot most people never see. The room smells faintly of paper and stale coffee, not the glamorous kind, no cigarettes, no perfume, no laughter drifting in from a soundstage, just paper, ink, the low hum of an overhead fan that hasn't been replaced since the war. Sunlight pushes through half-closed blinds, slicing the table into pale stripes. 4 men are already seated. None of them are stars, none of them will ever be photographed here. At the head of the table sits a studio executive whose name appears on letterheads, not marquees. He doesn't speak yet, he's waiting. To his right, a production manager flips through a binder thick enough to look architectural. Heavy stock, tabs, numbers typed with mechanical confidence. Across from him, a representative from an insurance firm adjusts his glasses, places a slim leather case on the table, and opens it with care, like a priest preparing a ritual object. At exactly 2:18, the door opens again. Another man enters, younger, precise. He carries a ledger. Not a script. Not a contract. A ledger. It lands on the table with a soft, final sound. No one reacts immediately. This is the moment. The moment when a decision has already been made, but hasn't yet been spoken. The film in question is expensive. Period costumes, overseas locations, weather-dependent schedules, a production that cannot afford delays, illness, improvisation, or surprises, the kind of movie that looks prestigious from the outside and fragile from the inside. And its star, its bankable star, has not been invited to this meeting. You can almost feel it now. The quiet tension of men who understand that what they're about to confirm will never be announced publicly, never debated in interviews, never corrected later. Once written here, it becomes reality. The insurance representative clears his throat. He doesn't mention the actor by name at first, he doesn't need to. He slides a single page out of the ledger and turns it so everyone can see. Columns, percentages, risk multipliers. A finger taps once near the bottom. Completion bond exposure. A small increase, not dramatic, not scandalous. But enough. Enough to move a number from acceptable to questionable. Enough to trigger a recalculation. The production manager exhales through his nose. He's seen this before, but never with a star this large. He knows what comes next, and he knows how quietly it will happen. Someone asks the question everyone already understands. What are our options? The insurance man doesn't answer right away. He looks at the ceiling, then back down at the page as if consulting something impartial and ancient. We can proceed, he says carefully, at revised terms. He pauses. Or we can proceed without him. The room goes still. Outside, somewhere across the lot, a camera crane swings into position. An assistant director shouts, "A different movie is being made, a different reality is unfolding." Inside this room, fame is being translated into risk. Not because of a headline. Not because of behavior anyone can point to. But because the ledger doesn't care about charm. The executive finally speaks. How much does the bond increase? The number is stated. It's not catastrophic, but it's enough to require board approval, enough to slow everything, enough to invite questions from people who do not like uncertainty. Silence. Then the executive asks the question that seals it. And if we recast? The insurance man doesn't smile, he doesn't apologize. The numbers normalize. That's all. Normalize. In that word lives the quiet brutality of the system, the idea that risk is not personal, that reputation is conditional, that history is negotiable. No one mentions awards. No one mentions past box office. No one mentions the posters already printed. Those things belong to marketing. This belongs to accounting. The ledger is closed. The decision is not recorded as a rejection, it's logged as a revision. By 2:41 p.m. the meeting is over. By 2:42, the men have moved on to the next item on the agenda. And somewhere else, maybe in a bungalow, maybe in a dressing room, maybe at home, the star is still rehearsing lines for a role that no longer belongs to them. They won't hear about this today. Or tomorrow. There will be no call explaining why the tone changed. No confrontation, no argument to win or lose. Just silence. A pause in communication, a delay, a scheduling conflict that never resolves. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the realization will form. Their value has been reassessed. Not in public, not creatively, but actuarially. For the first time, their career is no longer defined by what they can do, but by what might happen if they do it. And that understanding, quiet, invisible, irreversible, is where the real power shift begins. Type continue to generate the next section. Continue. Section 2, when silence replaces the phone call. The call doesn't come that night. Or the next morning. At first it feels normal, studios are busy, schedules shift, people delay decisions all the time, you tell yourself it's nothing, you've lived through worse, you've waited longer. But by the third day, something feels different. Your agent calls instead of the studio, that alone is a signal. His voice is calm, practiced, a little too measured. He says there are ongoing conversations. He says the production is reviewing logistics. He says nothing that can be argued with, nothing concrete enough to challenge. You ask the obvious question. Am I still attached? There's a pause, not long but long enough. Technically, he says, yes. That word lands strangely. Technically. It's the same word the ledger used. From that moment on, everything shifts into a slower register. Meetings that used to happen quickly now require rescheduling, scripts arrive later, rewrites stop reflecting your input, conversations that once felt collaborative become procedural. No one says you're out, but no one treats you like you're in. This is how Hollywood applies pressure without fingerprints. You don't hear accusations. You don't hear doubts. You hear nothing. And silence in this industry is not neutral, it is directional. You begin to sense it in small details first. A publicist asks fewer questions, a producer stops using your name when referencing the project. The language changes, the lead becomes the role, your schedule becomes availability. Availability. Another word that sounds harmless until it is. Behind the scenes, the ledger has already done its work. The studio doesn't need to explain itself because, technically, nothing has happened yet, no contracts have been voided, no announcements retracted, everything remains plausible. This ambiguity protects them. It isolates you. Psychologically, this is the most destabilizing phase. There's nothing to respond to, no accusation to refute, no decision to appeal, you can't fight a spreadsheet you're not allowed to see. You replay recent months in your head, every late arrival, every cold, every time you pushed through exhaustion because stopping felt like weakness. You wonder which moment crossed an invisible threshold. Was it that delay overseas? That hospitalization no one reported? That quiet note added to a file you never knew existed? The industry trains you to believe visibility equals security. That as long as you're seen on screen, on posters, in the trades, you're safe. This moment proves the opposite. You are learning in real time that the most important evaluation of your career happened without cameras, without conversation, and without you. And the studio isn't being cruel, that's the unsettling part. They are being rational. Completion bonds exist to eliminate uncertainty. Insurance exists to protect investment. From their perspective, this is not personal, it's fiduciary. But from yours, it feels like erasure in progress. Weeks pass. The agent calls again, his tone has shifted. He no longer speaks in hypotheticals, he says the studio is exploring alternatives. He stresses that this doesn't reflect your talent, he mentions timing, he mentions risk tolerance. He does not mention the ledger. Then comes the offer. Not a confrontation. A compromise. A pause. Maybe this is a good moment to step back, he suggests. Reset, be selective, let things cool. It's framed as empowerment, as choice. But you understand what's really being proposed. Step aside gracefully or be replaced quietly. This is where many careers fracture. Some actors fight, they demand explanations, they leak frustration to the press, they force the studio to respond publicly. Those battles are loud. And they rarely end well. Others do something far more unsettling. They accept the pause. Not because they agree with it, but because they recognize the leverage it creates. This is the psychological pivot the industry never talks about. When you stop chasing reassurance, the power dynamic changes. By stepping back, you remove the studio's ability to manage your decline in silence. You make absence intentional, you turn uncertainty into a statement. The studio expected compliance. They expected fatting availability. They expected time to solve the problem quietly. They did not expect restraint. And restraint in a system addicted to constant output feels disruptive. You decline smaller offers, you don't announce retirement, you don't explain yourself, you simply stop. No scandals. No tell-alls. No defiant interviews. Just absence. For a while, the industry interprets this the way it always does, as weakness, as irrelevance beginning. But then something unexpected happens. Your absence creates a vacuum the studio didn't anticipate. Projects stall, replacements struggle, comparisons start quietly circulating, not in the press, but in meetings. And the ledger, the same ledger that reduced you to a risk, starts showing a different kind of cost. The cost of replacement. The cost of losing something intangible they never learned how to ensure. And somewhere in another quiet room, another meeting is scheduled. This time, the ledger won't be the only thing on the table. The first time your name comes up again, you're not in the room. You're not even in the conversation. It happens in a casting meeting that was supposed to be routine. The replacement hasn't landed the way the numbers predicted. Test screenings feel flat. The chemistry reads clean but forgettable. The film is safe and somehow that's the problem. Someone says it out loud before anyone can stop it. He doesn't have what they had. No one argues. That's when the uncomfortable truth begins to surface. The ledger accounted for risk, but it didn't account for gravity. You were never just a line item, you were a reference point, a center of mass. When you stepped away, the system didn't collapse, but it lost its orientation. This is where Hollywood's unspoken hierarchy reveals itself. There are stars who are interchangeable. And then there are stars who quietly set the temperature of a room. The studio didn't remove you because you failed. They removed you because they were afraid of what might happen, and now, in your absence, they're discovering that fear has a cost too. Meanwhile, you are doing something that feels almost unnatural in this town. Nothing. No statements. No interviews. No strategic leaks. You don't rush to fill the gap, you don't announce a comeback, you let the silence stretch long enough that people stop knowing what to assume. Psychologically, this is not passive, it's disciplined. Every instinct trained into you says to remain visible, to remind the industry you're still valuable. But visibility is what gave them leverage before. Absence changes the equation. Executives begin hearing your name in unexpected places. Directors mention you offhandedly when discussing tone. Writers cite your earlier work as shorthand for a quality they can't quite describe. You know that presence. Presence. Another intangible no ledger can price correctly. Inside the studio, the original decision begins to feel less clean, not wrong, just incomplete. The insurance logic still holds, the risk numbers haven't changed, but the cultural math has. And cultural math is what sells tickets. This is the tension Hollywood rarely admits: financial safety versus creative certainty. The ledger protects one, the star embodies the other. In the past, studios resolved this tension by control: lock actors into contracts, keep them visible, keep them working, keep them manageable. But your pause disrupted that rhythm. By stepping back, you forced the industry to confront a paradox. They could reduce your risk by removing you, but they couldn't replace your weight. A senior executive brings it up quietly during a lunch meeting, not officially, not on record. We may have overcorrected. That sentence doesn't trigger immediate action. Hollywood doesn't reverse itself publicly, it adjusts sideways, slowly, indirectly. You start receiving calls again, not offers but inquiries, hypotheticals. If something were right, if timing aligned, if there were a way to manage exposure. They're testing the perimeter. You don't rush to answer. This is the psychological shift that redefines power. The moment you realize you are no longer negotiating from need. You've already survived the absence. You know now that stepping away didn't erase you, it clarified you. And the studio knows it too, even if they won't say it. What they're really asking is not whether you'll return, but on whose terms. Because your pause has reframed the original decision. The ledger didn't end your career. It revealed who controlled it. And by refusing to scramble for relevance, you quietly took some of that control back. But this kind of power comes with a cost. Not every door reopens. Not every project returns. What you gain is not volume, but selectivity. And in an industry built on constant motion, selectivity reads as authority. The studio learns a lesson it will apply for decades, though never publicly acknowledge. Some stars are safer as symbols than as assets. Some careers cannot be optimized without losing what made them valuable. And some pauses are not retreats. They are recalibrations. There is one final moment that seals this shift, one decision that confirms the industry has adjusted around your absence rather than replaced you. It won't be announced. It won't be celebrated. But it will quietly change how Hollywood defines bankable forever. The meeting that changes everything happens without you again. Late afternoon, same lot, different room. This time the ledger is still present, but it's no longer in charge. A senior executive sits back in his chair, fingers steepled, listening as a younger development head outlines a proposal. It's not framed as a vehicle, not a rescue, not a return. It's framed as containment. Limited schedule, controlled locations, shorter shoot, built-in pauses, a production structure designed not to push but to accommodate. In other words, the studio is adapting to the star, not the other way around. No one says your name at first, they don't need to, everyone knows who the structure is for. The irony is sharp. The same actuarial logic that once pushed you out is now being bent to bring you back carefully, quietly, on revised terms. But here's the difference. You are no longer waiting by the phone. When the call finally comes, it isn't urgent, it isn't apologetic, it's measured, respectful, almost cautious. We're considering something, your agent says, very specific, no pressure. No pressure. That phrase would have sounded absurd a year ago. Now it's real. You listen, you ask questions, you don't rush to fill the silence, and when the proposal ends, you don't say yes. You say you'll think about it. That pause, your pause, is the final shift in power. Because this time, the studio is the one exposed to uncertainty. They don't know if you'll return, they don't know if your absence will continue to define you, they don't know if the mystique they accidentally created will dissipate or harden. They have recalibrated around your restraint, and now they have to live with it. Whether you take the project or not almost doesn't matter. The industry lesson has already been learned. Bankability is no longer just about output. It's about reliability on your own terms. It's about how little explanation you require. From this point forward, studios quietly adjust how they assess power. Insurance remains, ledgers remain, but so does something else now, an awareness that some careers can't be managed through pressure without consequences. You didn't win a battle. You didn't expose anyone. You didn't reclaim control by force. You did it by not filling the silence they expected you to fear. And that's the part Hollywood never puts in its press releases. Because the most dangerous thing in an industry built on constant motion is someone who proves they can stop and still matter. Not loudly. Not defiantly. Quietly. On their own terms.